Greetings, fellow comrades of humanity. I ask you to join me in some inquiries to a book held dear and beloved to so many people, the Bible. Question 1. Genesis 3:20. If Eve, meaning mother of all, the name Adam gives her, is a concept not left much to interpretation and is meant in quite the literal sense, it really does beg the question of how much your faith overrides the concept of the impact of inbreeding on a population, judging by what we now know as proven genetics. Do this again for Genesis 9:18 to 19. Genesis 2. No, sorry, my bad. Question 2. Genesis 6:1 to 8. I wish to query the mind of a God whose thought man who was beyond all redemption, all help, all hope, sinned so badly that he now needed to be wiped out, and everything with him. Disregarding that ark safeguard, of course, with Noah and all that on it. When an omnipotent being chooses this course of action, you have to ask yourself, if you were in his shoes, and you could just Thanos snap the wicked out of existence, do you think a giant flood that kills everything is a better course of action? Let's not just think of the wicked he's killing, because obviously that's the point of it. He's also made a lot of other land-dwelling animals who are now going to suffer sorrow and misery and painful, slow death that they probably didn't deserve. So yes, ask yourself what calamity you could bring about that would remove the wicked and leave you with a clean earth. And if he's so powerful, why didn't he just start again anyway? New humans. In the passage of Noah's sons, Genesis 9:25 to 27, Noah clearly lays a curse on his grandson Canaan, favoring Shem. My question to this isn't even hinted or talked about to be the word of God. This is Noah speaking in an extremely drunken state, having just been ashamed of being found naked. He's laying down this curse, and this curse and blessing, in both in one, actually hold a lot of weight in the future of the Bible. So my question to this is this his words that have power, or is this God's words through him giving the power? I'm guessing it's going to be the latter. In Abram and Sinai in Egypt, Genesis 12:10 to 20. Again, I really have to ask myself these questions about an omnipotent being, where he feels that letting them go into these kingdoms, suggesting that Sinai is his sister, which weirdly enough I found out she was, instead of his wife, because of how scared he is they're going to take her and rape her and anything. First of all, if it's your sister, then she's up for grabs anyway, so that kind of defeats that purpose. Second of all, is what they've actually done here is entrapment. We know this to be wrong now. I don't know if God knew it was wrong then, but you'd want to hope that he had that sort of plan in mind if he saw this sort of future. Yeah, he clearly involves himself with entrapment and extortion, to which he is the judge, jury, and executioner of the said extortioner. All for the land and property of his chosen one. And he repeats the same method in Genesis 21-7 to other cities for similar reasons. But here we find a man who doesn't fall for the trap, stands his ground against God, and if I may be as bold to say, wins. I mean, I think God punishes him a little, but I don't know if that's because he's like sad that he got beaten in a way. Like, I'm not even sure if this plan is God's or Abram and Sinai's, because it never really states. But God could have told Abram it was a bad plan if he wanted to. Could have stopped him. But he doesn't. No, he lets him do it multiple times, expecting different results. I don't know, not very smart God there, if that's how he's going to do things. Especially if you can take into account again this omnipotence, this Thanos snapping ability. And I'll grant him foresight, and I'm going to do this a fair bit. How could he have not seen different ways of going about this? How is this the best course of action? How does this work in some divine plan? Does he need every other kingdom to expire to get his chosen people to the max? Can he not work out ways that benefit both parties, and both parties walk away richer and probably more morally better off due to actions taken that weren't entrapment and extortion? Yeah, so omnipotent being. Question 5, Genesis 18:23-33. When Abram intercedes on the behalf of Sodom, I now would beg the question again. With foresight, with omnipotency, you would think that God already had the plan for Sodom placed out, ready to go, yada yada. But somehow, even despite this, Abraham, using a linear form of argument, using the value of lives as his currency of choice, as that was the one under attack, I guess, supersedes to a moral question that we ask ourselves today, which is the life of one good man worth to hold the weight of many bad men, and how many do you judge that by? Stuff of that nature. I guess, like, people, the preachers will say that this is what it's meant to make you think. But my question begs this: if with foresight and that, first of all, how can an omnipotent being be reasoned with? He should know also, therefore shouldn't we need to told anything? And how is he not able to see the worth of one good man's life? To save a whole town, even. I mean, he admits his faults in the flood itself. He goes back on himself there and says it was a mistake. He didn't do it right. He probably could have done it better. And we have rainbows to prove this. And yet here we see him again thinking about taking the same course of action on a much less scale, I guess, because Sodom's just one place. It was a big place. It was a very influential place, apparently. Hence what the worry. So yeah, it's a bit of one of those situations where he keeps doing the same thing, but it seems now man can reason with him to stop him. A bit weird. And then, I guess you could put yourself in God's shoes and ask, what would you do with Sodom? What would you do with a place like that? How do you think you could fix it if I gave you every single power you could ever dream of? I think you could come up with better ways than fire and brimstone. I hope we could. Question 6. This one doesn't have a reference. After so much admission of fault, after so many self-admitted wrongdoings, how does God, the being that rules all, teaches all morals, is the provider of the way we should live our life? How is he not holding himself to these same morals? Is he exempt? Is he above the law? Yes, you could say that. He's omnipotent. But what... does he have any culpability at all in anything he does? Is there any consequences to his actions? I don't even want to go back into the regress of the who created God, who created that God, who created that God. I just want to know, just even God himself, how can he hold himself culpable? I mean, we can. We hold ourselves for culpability of things we do all the time. It's called having a conscience. Does God not have one? We were made in his image, so you would have to think along those lines that he did. Question 7. Now this one's not fun. I don't like this one. Lot and his daughters. Genesis 19:31-35. Now, here's where I really need to ask us all some very deep, dark questions. Grant every aspect of the event that led up to the time of the cave. Whereas the Bible itself even explains that there's still many people out there. There's even a couple of the divine line that could continue God's plan. I think that Lot isn't even a direct descendant, so there really doesn't have much claim to the divinity of this Israelites. I'm not sure about that, so don't quote me, please. The really deep, dark question I need to ask myself is, what sort of divine line, what sort of precious soul keeping, what sort of divine right of these people leads to an event where an older and a younger sister discuss the lineage of their family, come to the conclusion, very quick conclusion mind you, that the only way to save their family's line is to get their father drunk, one night after the other. He was so drunk that he doesn't know what they're doing when they get on him and get off, and have intercourse to the point where he impregnates them. I don't feel that this is right. I don't think anyone in their hearts truly thinks this is right. That this is a wrong act, and we all kind of know it. I think the book knows it too. And the biggest question I ask of this, and ask us all to ask ourselves of this, is, in what way did we need to know this to know the mind of God at any point in time in history? There's a lot of these things in a lot of the religions that we now know morally, with our morals today, that this is horrid, that this is almost disgusting. I don't know where you want to stand on it yourself. I call it an atrocity. But where's the culpability in that? Where's the justice? Genesis 32:28, question 8. Here's a question the Bible itself has now asked me to come to terms with. How am I to believe a man fought God? Sorry. Jacob wrestles with God. It sort of says this, it's very vague. And he fights with him and he wrestles with him. They're not attacking each other so much from what I just said. They're more just showing their strength of will. And Jacob holds out. Jacob does pretty well. He's said to have the man at almost a stalemate, to which God, who is implied to be the man, resorts to trickery. I'm going to call it this. You could call it magic, you could call it divineness, you could call it many things. I'm going to call it trickery. Because it seems to suggest an understanding of the human anatomy that the other did not. It's kind of like throwing sand in the eyes of your opponent to bring the stalemate to an end. Yeah, he graces him and he gives all that to his determination, but how on earth do you get an omnipotent God that can be wrestled with equally? That just shows that the determination of man can be just as strong as God, and that God himself is only as powerful as we are. Genesis 45:15, question 10. Last question is kind of similar to a few already mentioned here. Joseph claims he can see the future through dreams, and this is how he sort of gets into power and gets second in charge to the Pharaoh. And everybody knows this. And when his brothers arrive, they recognize him, but he recognizes them, and he doesn't think they do. If dreams are what God tells people he sees the future through, shouldn't his brothers also know this and sort of have some sort of pre-warning disposition to the fact that he could do this? I mean, this is... I think the book tries to claim that only Joseph himself has this power. That his brothers don't even have knowledge of it, even though it's knowledge from God. Maybe God just gave it to Joseph, who knows. And it's just weird because Jacob knows all this and plays a game of deception and trickery that I don't see as needed. Like, with the way his father embraces him when they finally meet later, wouldn't have just sending the word back that, hey, I'm Joseph and I'm here in Egypt and pretty much run the joint, would have been enough to get his father to come. Like, which brings me to my final note, my final sort of thought on what I've read of the book so far, which is that there's this overriding, over-sensing sort of fear of everything and everyone, including your brother, especially your brother. In a lot of the cases and stories of the Bibles, they fear each other to the point of madness. Jacob sends everything he has to his brother Esau, I don't know how to pronounce that name, in order to appease him. Which might I add, to me seemed like a very cowardice act. Oh, I'm very scared of you. Here's all my stuff. Here, I'll send you my wife and my children, and see if you killed them, and then decide whether I want to run or not. And then he fights God with determination. It's kind of a backwards story to me. It has this weird double. He's a coward, and he's the most determined, and I don't know. But this fear-based theme to the start of the Bible it's really worrying me, as if it was just taken for granted that everybody should fear everybody else. I mean, we still fear each other to this day, but that doesn't mean you believe your brother's going to come next door and stab him in the face. And I don't think it would be true back then. I mean, you'd think he could get away with stealing and stuff, but it's a bit different. Especially if you're going to have your hand cut off rather than just go to jail for a certain amount of months. Anyway, I'll leave you with that final thought. I wish you all goodwill, happiness in your lives, be nice to your family, and stay safe.